Well, on that note, it's all systems go for the ANC in Mangaung this weekend as the leadership in the province has declared its readiness to host the January 8th statement. This is despite having declared otherwise just last month. As the party holds various build-up activities, residents said they still are disgruntled over service delivery issues in that region. Speaking to media, party president said the country should have faith that the newly elected top 7 leaders would indeed bring unity and renewal in the ANC. For more on this, let's speak to political analyst and former ANC MP Melanie Verwoerd. Melanie, good morning and thank you so much for joining us today. Now, we know that the ANC conference has been adjourned and will restart today. What was your take on that postponement of the conference, and does this paint a picture of an unorganized organization?
Well, thank you first of all for having me. Look, delays in ANC conferences is nothing new. I don't know of a single ANC conference that ever started on time. I mean, even NASREC 1 in 2017 was at least half a day late. Now, this one was particularly delayed. And I think, yes, to some extent, it does indicate some or refers to some of the organizational disarray that's been plaguing the ANC really for the last couple of years. But I think most probably more importantly, the time was taken up by the leadership battles. And I think it's more of an indication of just how important those battles were. Not only inside the ANC, where of course it was all about the heart of the ANC and which direction the ANC will go, but because it's the governing party, also the way that the country will be going. And we know that if the ANC makes a big mistake on that level, as we've seen with Polokwane, it can be fairly disastrous for the country. So I think it's good that they at least now are going back to the policy issues because of these delays, the policy issues really started being put on the back burner, and not helped also by the fact that there was a soccer World Cup final in the middle of all of this where they lost the whole afternoon. But I think that so at least now they're having that because it is important, of course, that policy discussions are done and concluded.
And speaking of those policy issues, I mean, there's a lot that the ANC needs to get through in the next 2 days, from reports on commissions, strategy, organizational renewal, issues around their finances and stability, reports on governance, as well as constitutional amendments. Do you think they will be able to get through and really comb through all of these issues without rushing it?
Look, they'll most probably rush it a little bit because, like you rightly say, there are a lot of issues on the table. But remember that a lot of this work is being done in the branches already. So it's not like delegates go there cold and that they start discussing it for the first time. And the ANC's done this numerous times. So I'm sure they'll get through it. And then, of course, a lot of work eventually gets done at the level of Luthuli House and the NEC level and so on when it comes to the real nitty-gritty. What they really need to do is just establish the broad parameters within which the party will then put in, they'll color in the details.
Also, now speaking on policies and most importantly resolutions, we heard earlier on our reporter Mbali Titani was speaking to the ANC Johannesburg Regional Secretary, and he was raising issues about some of those 2017 radical economic policy proposals that were made and not necessarily seen through, such as the nationalization of the Reserve Bank or whether it's being extended to a mandate that will include job creation. Will we see the ANC, or does the ANC see through a lot of the resolutions that they make at these national conferences?
Look, they see through some of them, but others, and there's always been a gap in the ANC or a sort of out in the sense that if they believe that something will be disastrous for the country or the implications wasn't foreseen at the conference level, or if they believe it's not the right time to do it, that they then can choose to either not do it or delay it for some time. And the Reserve Bank would be a good example of that, where they have decided that it's not the opportune time. And this was discussed post-2017. Other issues are, of course, the intention is there, but it doesn't always work out in practice because of economic issues like a pandemic that hits, or, for various other reasons, economic reasons, etc. Yes, some of them are often taken through, but many times there are also resolutions that that never make it to the actual implementation.
And do you think that this would have some kind of effect on them come 2024 with regards to people then casting their votes based on some of those resolutions as expectations?
Look, I think people who would have voted for the ANC and didn't do so with the last local government elections, to bring them back to the polls require, one, organizational capacity, which they have lost a lot of in the last few years. But secondly, the party needs to enthuse their voters again. They need to build confidence, so people need to regain trust in the ANC. And secondly, that the ANC will do what they say they are going to do. And secondly, they must get them enthusiastic, because we know from the local government elections, with the exception of very small pockets, that it wasn't that ANC voters went to vote somewhere else. They just didn't turn up to vote. They couldn't care less. And so that couldn't care less factor is what the ANC really would need to fight if they want to make a good showing again at the 2024 elections. And that, that includes doing certain delivery issues. But a lot of the serious delivery issues are not things that you can fix within the next 18 months. So the ANC would have to look at other strategies. And amongst that would obviously also include keeping some of the social grants and so on active, and which is not always things that are very popular with the private sector. But they would have to implement certain policies. And then, of course, like the speaker before me said, I think electricity and energy is a very big factor. So those are the issues, not necessarily that people are going to sit and count how many resolutions have been implemented or not.
Most certainly. Now, we saw that in December, those that are now surrounding the president with regards to the top 7, as well as a majority of the NEC members, seem to be people that are ready to serve for the president. Does this seem as though we have hope in a renewed ANC that will then work together in ensuring that the country is then governed properly?
Look, I think that undoubtedly this is a much more supportive NEC in top 7 than the one the president faced post-2017. And so he should feel a lot stronger to make certain unpopular decisions for the sake of the country and the growth of the economy, et cetera, et cetera. But I think what we will see, and that links up with your previous question as well, is we must remember that he still faces enormous constraints. This is not just like a Nike ad where you can say, just do it. Right. The president will have to, he still has to get a good cabinet. He still has to improve the civil service. He's still got economic constraints. He can still be recalled by the ANC if he can't bring them with him, so he needs to be careful with that. And then, of course, like I said, he has to keep his voters on side, which might not always be the same thing as what the markets and the private sector would want.
Now, I mean, the next few days obviously presents a lot of activities for the ANC, with the January 8th statement taking place this weekend as well. We know it's taking place in Mangaung, the birthplace of the ANC, but that's also just one area that's plagued with so much political infighting and lack of service delivery.
Absolutely. And I hope, if nothing else from this weekend, that the ANC will look around them in the Free State and in Mangaung particularly. I was really shocked when I went there recently about the deterioration in service delivery, how many of the shops were boarded up, etc. And if nothing else, if they don't achieve anything else, hopefully they can be motivated to actually focus a little bit on what's going on in the Free State.
All right. Thank you so much for your time this morning. That's Melanie Verwoerd, who's also a former ANC MP as well as political analyst, giving us her take there with the resumption of the ANC's national conference. Now,